Castle Eden Black Rich Milk Stout.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. Notice the new bins. I can't find my old ones. I think the dog's eating them. The little git. I've got a bottle of this stuff, and this is the Castle Eden Black Rich Milk Stout. Now, I've tried a couple of their beers before, and they've been really good. That's why I bought this. And this is their Black Rich Milk Stout. Now, this brewery has got some sort of interesting history going on. They were first founded in 1826, and they were based in a place called Seaham, which is in County Durham, and they gradually expanded, became very popular in the 19th century, and by World War II, by some quirk of fate, all their beer was produced in bottles. They didn't do cask beer at all. After the war, that changed and they started producing cask beer again. But in the 1960s, in the early 1960s, they were taken over by Whitbread. Do you remember Whitbread? Old brewer from years ago. They took them over and they decided that they would stop all their cask beer and they would only brew keg beer. Now, keg beer was the in thing in the 60s and 70s, and it spawned the foundation of CAMRA, the Campaign for Real Ale. They were basically getting fed up with all this keg brewed beer, and they decided that they want to revert back to the cask beer. Now, you can argue which is the better beer. Cask, generally for ale, is the better beer. For lager, of course, keg beer is the best. It lasts longer. It's less prone to reaction with oxidisation, you know, rather than the wood, etc. And obviously, it's cheaper to produce. Casks or barrels, as they are, you know, that's a required skill to produce them. So kegs are much easier to produce. They're made of aluminium, as far as I know, and obviously very light. Not when they're filled with beer, they're not, but they're easy to produce, easy to transport, easy to hook up, and generally more robust, if you know what I mean. However, from some angles, people claim that you're sacrificing flavour when you put them into kegs. I'm not going to go into that now because that's a whole different kettle of fish. You know, if I could do a whole video on the differences between keg and cask and the history of the two. But needless to say, Whitbread were only brewing keg beer for them. And that happened until 1991 when they started producing cask again. So that's a good sort of 20 years that they were producing keg. And as I say, between the sort of 60s and 80s, the production of keg beer was very popular. It was popular with landlords, for the reasons I recently mentioned. But in 1991, they started reproducing cask beer again. However, in 1998, Whitbread said, nah, this is not going to happen, and they sold it on. AV InBev took it over, and they decided to close it down. But it was taken over by, the name was taken over by Cameron. You know, Camerons, they do the Motorhead beer. They're based up in, I think, up north somewhere. I don't know where. Or is it the Midlands? It's north to me anyway. And they were based there for a time. However, AB InBev, as I say, took them over, and AB InBev said, nah, we don't want to produce any more of their beer. So now it's been taken, I think since 2015, it was taken over by a microbrewery up in County Durham, and that's where all this little lot have come from. And I have to say, they're really good. I've tried two of their beers before, the Castle Eden Ale, which is quite well known, it's their flagship beer. That was really good. I was really surprised by how good that was. And I also tried another one, I think it was their Red Ale, and again, another good one. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a good one. So let's check it out. Right, this is a 4.6% beer. It is 500ml in the ABV stakes. On the back it says a rich, indulgent black stout, cask leading black blends, 4 malts and choicest hops. I'll talk about them in a minute. To give generous depth of flavour to its silky textured stout. Originally brewed at the world famous Castle Eden Brewery in Castle Eden Village, the brand was reintroduced using the same traditional recipes and ingredients in 2018 from the brewer's new home in Seaham Harbour. Yeah, so it's always been based in Seaham. It hasn't moved. The hops I was talking about, they are Golding and Cascade. In this, really not going to make much of a difference. This is all about the malt. This also contains oats as well, which is normal for a stout, gives it the body. And it also contains lactose, as it's a milk stout. One thing it does contain as well is Moscato, I think that's how it's pronounced, Moscato sugar, which is basically a cane sugar that is part refined and quite popular in India. Believe it or not, in India they use it to brew illegal hooch. So it's definitely fermentable. And of course, invert sugar, that type of sugar is quite common in British and Belgian beers. This, however, is a refined cane sugar. Normally it's not actually, I'm lying. Usually the Belgian stuff is beet sugar. This stuff is cane sugar, but it's all gone through that caramelisation process and it gives the beer a sweet flavour. So there you go. Let's get it home and let's see what's going on. Now, it's been quite warm today in the middle of March, and a stout really wasn't what I wanted, but the fridge is bare. It's like that old Mother Hubbard chestnut. There is not much in there. I've got a big order on the way from the House of Trembling Madness, believe it or not, up in Yorkshire. I've got a load of German beer, some Belgian beer and some British beer on the way. Contrary to what people think, nobody supplies me with free beer. I have to buy it all by myself. I'm not complaining because it means you're going to get an unbiased review. There it is in the glass. I fucked that up massively. That is a beige tan head on the nose. Wow, yeah, just roasted malt. God, sweet roasted malt. You can almost smell the oats too. And there is a lot of bitter roasted barley on that too as well. It's got that ashtray smell. Now, ashtray and, well, burnt type flavours, they're synonymous with barley, and it normally comes from the roasted malt, where the malt has been roasted and it's not been burnt, but where it roasts it gives it that ash type flavour. And actually that's quite desirable in some craft brewed stouts. It gives it like a smoky style flavour. Now it's not like the Schlenkerla, the German smoke beer, it's not that extreme, but you do get a hint of what I perceive to be ash, and it's normally only found in stouts. As I say, not the worst flavour in the world, believe it or not. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? There's the cap, by the way, it's just plain black, in case you were wondering. There it is in the glass. Looks quite nice. Let's get it down the hatch. Bottoms up. Not bad. Very rich, I will say that. Full-bodied, very rich, very smooth. And of course, what's giving it that smoothness is the lactose that's been put into here. Now they've called it a milk stout. Milk stout is an old traditional British type of stout that has been brewed in the usual way, but also with the added bonus, whether you think it that, of having lactose in it. And the lactose, it makes it very smooth indeed, very drinkable. And I imagine it's what it's what has been substituted now with nitro in a lot of stouts. So for example, draft Guinness, that's super smooth, and of course the nitro is making that super smooth. If you haven't got nitro, or you don't put nitro in your beers, a way of making that smooth, or as smooth, is with the addition of lactose. It does give it a really nice smooth type mouthfeel, and it kills, I don't say it kills the carbonation, but the carbonation really isn't obtrusive. But it's nice. You do get quite a milky sweetness to it, but then on the back end it's all about that roasted malt, big coffee and dark chocolate type flavours, and it's doing exactly what a decent stout or a decent milk stout would do. And I've just noticed there's a hair in the glass, and I wonder if that's come from my beard. Fucking hell. Yeah, it is nice. I do like this. Goes down very nicely indeed. 4.6%. You're sort of in the ballpark with Guinness on the ABV stakes, and it has certainly got more body to it, obviously with the addition of the sugar and the oats and the lactose. This is going to have more of a body to it than Guinness, and it's certainly got more flavour to it as well, but obviously Guinness is macro brewed. I'm trying to give you a comparison with something you may be familiar with. This is a bit more intense. And it isn't bad, I have to say. I'm not too averse to having a few of these, actually. Very smooth, quite creamy as well. You do get the, I know lactose is the sugar that you get from milk, but you do get that creamy, milky style of flavour along with the roasted malts in it. And it is not a bad effort, I have to say. What's the verdict on Castle Eden Black? Yeah, not bad. I'm quite liking this brewery. I've tried the two before, as I mentioned, the red and the Castle Eden Ale, both really nice beers. And this isn't a bad one either. I think it's going to be quite hard for people down here to get hold of, and if Beers of Europe don't have it, then you may struggle. But if you can get hold of it, it's a cheaper alternative to some of them craft brew beers. Even though this is a microbrewery, the price is a bit more realistic, and it does everything that a milk stout should do. It's got bags of flavour, nice mouthfeel, super smooth, good body to it, and yeah, just an all-round decent milk stout. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, and I was deliberating whether to give it 7.5, but I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It is not bad as stouts go. Stout isn't my favourite style of beer. I don't mind it, I'm quite partial to it, but it's not my favourite style. You know, if it's a toss-up between this and say a German Dunkel, or even a half-decent best bitter, I'd always go for that rather than the stout. But this isn't bad, I have to say. And yeah, I could drink a fair few of these if I had to. Fucking hell. Yeah, because it'd take a lot of persuasion, wouldn't it? Yeah, so I think 8 out of 10 is a fair mark. I think I got this from Beers of Europe. Not sure whether they've got it in stock now. Bought this a while back. As I say, I'm down to the last dregs in the fridge. Got a delivery on the way. So yeah, I think that's a fair mark, 8 out of 10. And I recommend it if you can get hold of it. And remember, beer is working class champagne.